So just to set a few things straight from the beginning. This mount has been set up in a somewhat improvised way, and I'm not a mount guiding expert. I'm doing my best, but what I'm certainly not saying is that this amazing high precision mount can't guide with a high precision. I'm just trying my best and get this to work, and this is kind of my story. I have no doubt whatsoever that the error is here and not here, just to set that completely straight from the beginning. So, guiding for the first night. I have tried to get OAG to work, but it's either shadowing the sensor or the stars are so distorted and the SNR is so low that I've not been able to guide at it. And so I'm still working on it, still trying on it. So what I have in place instead is a SkyWatcher. So this is a 400mm focal length, and I've got an aperture of 80mm. So all in all, it's a focal ratio of 5.4. And I then also got my old guide scope that sits as a guide scope to the guide scope, literally, it is. And that's 190mm with a 50mm aperture, so it gives a focal ratio of 3.8. So it's faster, but it's 190mm. The C9.25 are running at the native focal length, which is 2350mm. So the ratio between the two are absolutely incredibly inappropriate. But that's what I have, and that's what I was running with the first night. So that was the guiding setup for the testing during the first night. The other part worth noting about the setup I have before looking at the test is that I'm actually using my EQ6 tripod, and I'm modified it in a way that I can attach the EQ8 on top. So firstly, I recognize that the EQ8 and counterweights and everything is going to weigh more than the EQ6 tripod was designed to be able to take. So what I've done is that I have a bolt going through all the way here and into this board underneath, and then I got a nut and I got a washer. So I can adjust the offloading of the of all the equipment on the tripod to make sure that the tripod don't break under the weight, but at the same time I can adjust it in a way that I have a sufficient amount of pressure going into the tripod to make sure it's really stable, and I believe it works really well. But that might be a variable to bad guiding, but I do believe this is a steady and fairly good solution. So the mount itself is connected to the pier adapter flange, and what I've done is I've drilled 3 holes into the tripod and then run bolts through with a washer to allow it to really be tightened up really well. So the adapter flange is attached really firmly to the top of the EQ6 mount. So all in all, it's actually quite a stable construction, but it's not made for this, and it is a bit of an improvisation, so it might be one other thing that actually introduces some variables into the equation.
Okay, so let's explore the PhD2 logs a bit, just to see what we can find there. So I started with the calibration, and the session started around 10 in the evening, which is more or less the nautical dawn at this time in New Zealand. I did some quick guiding, and but this is the first time where I have trained the telescope on NGC 1532, which let's have a look at it. So this is 1532. So we are currently at 75 degrees altitude, so it's really nice and high up in the sky. So configuration I'm using here is, so my guide scope is 190mm and my main scope is 2350. So I know that the main scope to guide scope ratio is terrible, but that short focal length gets a really good SNR, and it actually turns out to work in really well. That's something we can look into when comparing the results with the second evening. I guess that the focus is not that amazing on HFD at 5+, but it works quite well. Other things to notice, well, so this is before the guiding starts, so really these values are just the guiding values here are really kind of like the default ones starting off. It's saying 1 second, but that's actually not the case once we actually have a look at the results. So anyway, let's go and have a look at the results from the first calibration. So as I said, it's actually 1.5 seconds exposure time on the guide scope. The polar alignment is minimal, and I forgot to measure declination backlash, so unfortunately I don't have that report here. But otherwise, the values coming out of these roughly 5 minutes worth of testing with a fantastic SNR. So this is the value to watch actually with my tiny, completely incompatible guide scope. It still gives an amazing SNR, and I really do think that contributes to good guiding. But anyway, more about that later. Values in general are quite good. Looking at this, for me, this is just absolutely brilliant. So let's have a look at the PH2 guide log as well. So that was started at 10/11. So that's here. So from here, there's no guiding. And just look at that. I mean, even declination is amazing, but RA, yes, actually fascinating enough, RA is slightly higher than declination. So if we just enlarge that a bit, we actually have an RA of 0.58 and a declination of 0.40 RMS error. And I expected an RA, theoretical RA, of 0.11. So I am in shock and horror at this time. I admit it, I really was, because the expectation was that it would be way, way, way lower. Especially when the object in question is such a high, so high in the sky. But yes, okay, so I fiddle a bit, I try a few things. I can't actually remember everything I did. I'm talking about different kind of algorithms and a few things. So then at 22:43 I started guiding, and then I do a second calibration, still aimed at NGC 1532. And so this is similar. The polar alignment is a bit different, but it's still very close. It's very similar values to before. I'm still running 1.5 seconds. It's a total of by 5 minutes that I've checked. Get a slightly different values, but otherwise it's very similar. It's not very different from before. Slightly worse. And when looking at the guiding graphs, you can see that the RA is doing a pretty good job. But then we have in declination falling off a bit. If we have a bit of a look on the values here, then we can see that now we are at a slightly lower altitude. And I'm just wondering, when I'm seeing the declination here, the red graph trailing off, that it might already be affected by it, and that this might be a backlash issue or something like that, because it's not a polar alignment error. Of course, it's already been confirmed to be quite good, but the RA is doing a sterling job. The problem is that it is doing a sterling job, but at the time, almost 0.6 was still shock and horror to me, because I expected it to be way, way lower. And the fact that deck is now 0.92 is just, I'm seeing better performance out of my EQ6. And I was admittedly panicking a bit at this time. So what I'm doing is I'm doing some fiddling, I'm trying some different things. I actually can't remember everything I did. It was a wild clicking on pretty much all the different kind of settings imaginable. And it's not getting better. It's going up and down. I mean, we've got good values, 0.34 and so on, but in the end I decide, no, okay, it's time to just run an imaging session and see how things works out. So at 3 minutes past midnight, I run a imaging session. That's what you see in here. So we've got quite a few spikes on RA, funnily enough, some on deck as well. The overall tracking. It's all in all 0.46 on RA. When I saw that, I got a bit depressed. When I saw DEC, it's like, yeah, okay, I do understand that there's a lot of talk about the backlash issues on the SkyWatcher mounts, including the EQ8 and the high precision version of it. So something I can accept, but I couldn't really accept the RA error. Yeah, so the SNR about 150 to peaking around at 200, so you got a fairly clear signal. It's a fairly clear night, so it's looking quite good, but I couldn't help being a bit in shock over the lack of precision around the RA. So I'm running that session, and after 2 hours, it's starting to drop a bit. We're going down to an altitude around 52, and then around 2 o'clock in the morning, it's all the way down to 32 degrees. So it's getting really low. So I'm coming out of that session roughly 10 minutes to 2 in the morning. Do a few things, a bit of calibration again. I do believe there's a meridian flip happening, so I just wanted to recalibrate again. And then I run a second guiding assistant session. What I have there is, so now I'm actually running exposure time of 2 seconds. I'm still doing a 5-minute guiding session here. But now I managed to do the, to measure declination backlash, and it's shock and horror. 3,752. I mean, we're talking 3.7 seconds. That's insane. If you have that kind of declination backlash, it will completely mess up RA as well. It's just not, it's very difficult to do anything about. However, this is the important bit. When I set up PhD2, the PhD2 profile, I said I got absolute encoders because I do, but I only got absolute encoders on RA. So PhD2 correctly says that, well, you got absolute encoders, so if you got backlash, it doesn't matter because it's compensated for through the encoders. So it wasn't applied. So this entire night I actually ran without any backlash compensation whatsoever. Otherwise, we still got similar values. Not much have changed, but if we're looking at the backlash results, it's similar to my EQ6. It's a bit depressing to see, to be entirely honest. So seeing this, I was not very pleased at all. So anyway, I decided that it's time to switch target because we are going a bit getting a bit low on the horizon. So I switched over to Centaurus A. So at the time, Centaurus A is at altitude of 44 degrees, which is a bit better. So that's why I kick off the last session. That is 3 hours and a bit. And during that session, the RA, let's zoom in here. So the RA error is now 0.36 and declination is 0.33. And looking at it, I was despairing yet again because it's not low enough, and RA is still higher than DEC. So I wasn't happy with it. But if you look at 0.49, that's a 0.5 RMS error over 3 hours time, with a target that goes from and it stays actually quite high, because we're starting at the start of the session, we're talking about altitude 44, we then go to 55 an hour later, 4 o'clock in the morning it's 66, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is effectively when it's game over, we are talking 77 degrees. So the tracking is really good at that level. So the tracking is quite good, but I was expecting extremely good tracking. And also looking at the graph, and I'm not good enough at this to actually say what's going on, but I can see a periodicity here. So it is, something's going on. I just need to figure it out. And I mean, if you're an expert in this, please do provide comments, because I'm not telling you how it is. I'm just telling you what I see, And what I'm saying is that I understand some of it, but I do not understand other parts of it. So let's have a look at what the subframes actually look like. So here we are in PixInsight, and we're having a look with Blink. So I see very few artifacts that comes from tracking. There are some minor hints here and there, but most of them are very, very subtle. So I can't say that it's really impacted the image quality in a way that it can't be stacked and or can't be used. So let's have a look at them in Subframe Selector. And I graphed it all on eccentricity and FWHM on the other axis. So one thing that sticks out here, for instance, is this one here with a very high eccentricity. So let's just go over and have a look and see what that looks like. So this is the subframe, and yeah, you can see some elongation here. If I did a visual inspection of this, I would still feed this to APP because it would chew it up and it would reduce the SNR a bit and create some clarity. So no, I don't think it's too bad. And looking at it at the with the aberration inspector, you can see that the elongation is actually constant throughout. It's not radiating from the middle. So yeah, this is definitely a tracking issue, but not very significant. So let's go back and have a look, because we also have a peak here with the full width half maximum as well, which is quite high. So it's same but different. So let's go over and have a look at that one and see what that looks like. And this is from the Centaurus A, and yeah, maybe you can see some tiny bit of artifacts, but it's not very much, and the stars are really nice and round. So the aberration inspector tells us more or less the same thing. And if I can say anything, I'd say that if there's any elongation here, it's more of a back focus thing than a tracking thing. So yeah, no, I must say that the subframes actually looks quite okay, at least from a tracking perspective. That's the conclusion of the first night. Then I did get an opportunity to actually run things and apply a lot of ideas and suggestions from the AstroBin forum the second night.